Sarah Dowie.
Mr Speaker, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this first reading of the Accident Compensation, Financial Responsibility and Transparency Amendment Bill. And it's always an honour to follow such an eloquent speech by my colleague, Mr Andrew Bailey, who has this wonderful knack of being able to expel financial sums and figures and use them in his speech. And it still is very nice to follow Mr Twyford, and I will probably come to that later. But it is also very apt and fitting that I should take this call at this time, and I'll come back to the reason why shortly. But this scheme is now has turned 40 years and is a critical and integral part of our society, Mr Speaker, with respect to our social sphere and economic sphere. A no-fault 24/7 coverage scheme for residents and visitors covering injuries, whether they be at home with a motor vehicle or at work. Now, I don't consider myself clumsy and I don't consider myself uncoordinated, but I am, while I take this call, injured. And injured just on Sunday, in fact. I was at a child's birthday party with my daughter where I lifted her off an extremely heavy solid Rimu stool, and as I brought her forward to meet me, the stool decided to topple over and land on my toe, the very toe that is responsible for my bipedalism, and it was crushed and it was broken. And we all know how fortunate it is to be rushed off to ED and seen by some fantastic frontline staff, and my thanks to the nurses and X-ray people. I'm not sure what the technical term is for X-ray technician. Well, that's handy. But they were very compassionate, and I'm very thankful for the expertise. And hopefully I will be covered by ACC with respect to my treatment, because I want to get healthy. There's nothing more exhilarating than running down the corridors of Parliament while the bells are ringing to get here to address you, Mr Speaker. So that's my personal story about the ACC compensation scheme. But as we know, this bill, Mr Speaker, this bill is about levied accounts. It's about the levied accounts of workers and earnings and motor vehicles. And if we look at some of the background, as we've heard in prior speeches, in 1999, ACC moved into the premise of fully funding the lifetime costs of an injury claim. Before this, only current costs were covered by levies. The legislation as it stands states that ACC must continue to collect residual levies until 2019, so that's some 4 years out. And what this bill will provide is an updated framework. It will improve it, it will make it more transparent, implementing a more comprehensive set of principles for the funding of accounts through levies. So, number one, levies for each account must meet the lifetime costs of claims in relation to injuries that have occurred in that year. Number two, what the bill will do, if an account is in deficit, for example, cannot meet those costs, or alternatively has a surplus, both must be corrected by the setting of levies at an appropriate rate for subsequent years. And finally, large changes, the real peaks and troughs that we have seen in the past must be avoided. And this will provide, Mr Speaker, greater flexibility and stability in levy setting. This bill will provide better guidance in how to manage this while balancing the needs of injury cost with levy collection. And it's interesting to note, just following on from Mr Twyford's contribution that the 2014 Performance Improvement Framework review of ACC also identified such weaknesses, noting that there is no overarching legislative framework that establishes the objectives to be met or principles to guide the annual levy setting process. And this is a bill that the Minister, the Honourable Nikki Kaye, seeks to address through those three premises. So not only does this bill increase transparency, but it makes sense fiscally. We want to make sure the scheme is well funded and can withstand the volatilities of the marketplace, but we have a duty to ensure that levies are kept as low as possible. So the bill also introduces stronger reporting requirements regarding account solvency and ACC funding, and it takes care of the over-collection of levies. So this is a government that is committed to making sure ACC remains sustainable and effective. In 2008, as we've heard previously, this government inherited a $4.8 billion deficit in ACC accounts. The government and ACC have worked hard, very hard, to dig us out of this hole. But not just that, ACC has worked extremely hard on the way it treats the injured and has focused on its clients' needs. And I am fortunate to sit on the Transport and Industrial Relations Select Committee, and we heard from ACC and some of the measures that they have put in place to raise the bar with respect to customer service in-house. And I commend those officials and case managers for making that a priority in increasing their compassion towards the injured, in updating some of their systems and making sure that reviews and other administrative processes are carried out in a timely function. So that adds to the trusts of those clients that deal with ACC. As of March 2015, ACC's investment portfolio has reached $31.5 billion. And while ACC's financial performance is still subject to short-term volatilities, the performance of ACC as a scheme has definitely improved. And as a result, this government's excellent management has led us out of that $4.8 billion hole that Labour left us in. And since 2012, we've made levy reductions. New Zealanders have saved around $1.5 billion, benefiting businesses, workers and motor vehicle owners, saving New Zealanders money, our families' money, which goes directly back into their savings. And obviously they're the best to know how to use that and put that to good use. And I also note Business New Zealand's approval of this bill and the introduction of it. And as an electorate MP that has her doors open to her constituents, I also note the public's approval of this bill, our approval of the management of the ACC levy and the reductions that we are making going back into their back pockets. So we're now looking at, as part of Budget 2015, at an average ACC motor vehicle levy falling from approximately $330 to $195
Unbelievable.
per year from 1st of July. And we're looking at an average cut of $75 for vehicles, and over two years, a 20-cent reduction in the average work account levy and 6 cents in the earners account levy. So this bill, Mr. Speaker, is about fiscal responsibility, transparency. This is a clear results-driven bill, and hence I commend this bill to the House.
Oh, great.